So again, welcome from our side. My name is Julien Adelberger. I'm a Senior Project Coordinator at IDSA, and I'm accompanied by my colleague Anil. Maybe Anil, you can also shortly introduce yourself.
Sure. Good morning. So this is Anil. I'm from the Technology and Architecture team. I work as a senior project manager and also am involved in several other activities, including the data space protocol and also the co-leading of the R&D project that we are involved in.
Yeah, thanks a lot. To my background, I'm working in the impact team at IDSA, and this is more like the sales team of our organization. So I'm responsible also to acquire new members for IDSA, but I'm also working in some research projects from the educational domain to health domain, and also Openverse, which is a European funded project, and dealing with the integration of data spaces into MR technology, so VR, AR, and so on. So really interesting stuff. And today we would like to be open to your questions. And first of all, we start with a general presentation about data spaces, about our organization. And also, Anil will talk a little bit about the data space protocol, what was already mentioned. So let's get started, and let me share my screen. So again, a warm welcome to everyone who just participated. So the Q&A session is a monthly session, and with this session, we want to offer you an essential guide to data spaces and also cater to your questions that you have about data spaces and about IDSA. So coming to the agenda for today, so from 9 to 9:30, we will give you an introduction, and from 9:30 onwards, we will have time for the real Q&A. So then let's share your questions and answer them appropriately. So when we are talking about the data economy and the evolution of data sharing, so for the most part, it was more like a bilateral data exchange from one to one. Now we are more in the phase of a closed community, so data sharing few to few, but what we want to achieve is really a decentralized and dynamic data ecosystem, so that data sharing can happen from many to many. But the reality actually is that 80% of industrial data is never used. So we see that there's the prospect of a sharing economy, and that data is used, is monetized, so different kinds of data that can also fuel and propel the growth of AI applications. But in the end, these industrial data is not used. It resides on the premises of a company, and some industries are hesitant to share that. So we see that there's definitely a need for security. And this is where the data space approach comes in. It's connecting all kinds of data endpoints. So a data space in itself is like the sum of all data endpoints that are able to share data with each other. What we are striving for is a federated data architecture, so there's no physical data integration. Leave the data where it is, but we also want to have interoperability, so no silos and no vendor dependency. This all comes also with the concept of data sovereignty, so that you decide what kind of data will be shared. So, for example, you are the data owner, and you can attach specific terms and conditions to your data before handing it over to the data consumer. The data consumer, in turn, has to accept these conditions that you set and then obtain the data. You also want to have traceability, as it's mentioned here. So you want to know where your data goes, and you want to trace it back to the origin. So in the end, what we want to achieve is that in the data space, you're dealing with trusted participants. So what does a data space look like? I'm seeing here in this graph an example from Industry 4.0. There are several companies, and a company can use then an IDS certified connector. The connector is the gateway to the data space, and attached on this connector can be usage policies. So as I said, for example, these data usage constraints, you can only use my data for a specific amount of time or just specific data sets. And then these go on into the industrial cloud, but you always have the possibility to trace that back. Other companies can then access this data, and as you can see, from company 1 to company N+2, this is a whole ecosystem that's then based on this principle of trust. So we really see that companies want to link data, but they also must preserve this kind of data sovereignty. As I said, you want to have still the ownership of your data. So there's this balancing act. On the one hand, total ownership and control of your data. On the other side, the prospect of interoperability, this sharing economy, as I said. And we see that the balancing factor here is data sovereignty in data spaces. Still, you have then, of course, the question, do I plug in or not? So bringing interoperability and trust to ecosystems is not something that goes ad hoc, but participants in a data space need to take informed decisions about trustworthy partners, but also trustworthy components. The components that are used are already mentioned, the data space connector. So you really want to know that the assets, the components that are used in a data space are also trustworthy. And this is where IDSA, so the International Data Spaces Association, comes in. Right now, we have around 166 members, and these members are, of course, the backbone of IDSA. We are a member-driven nonprofit organization, and the members are developing the data space technology. They are adopting it, they are using it. And as you can see here from this picture, we have different kinds of organizations, from research institutions to large corporations like Google, like Microsoft, like T-Systems or Huawei. And we are also a real global institution. So a lot of these members come from all over the world. So from Japan, from China, and so on. So in the end, we are operating in 31 countries, so to say, because of our large member base, and 860 plus people are contributing to the success of IDSA. So the International Data Spaces Association can be divided into different responsibilities. So first of all, there's the coordination of activities in the IDSA community to enable co-creation of the so-called guidelines called the IDS standard. Anil will also talk about data space protocol, which is planned to be recognized as a global standard. So also at standardization bodies like ISO and so on. We have a management of repositories. These are functional specifications, technical documentation, and support for open source implementations, and of course community management, networking and matchmaking. If you're a member of IDSA, we have a recurring event every Monday. That's the so-called Monday morning call, where our members can present current projects, status on their data space implementations. And yeah, our community is participating in this Monday morning call, and most of the time we see that there are interesting discussions then, and also a direct matchmaking. So some people will definitely say, oh, that's really interesting what you presented. I have a similar project, let's work together. So this networking aspect is not only in these kind of events, but also within our community, our GitHub repository. That's where the community management and our networking really factors in. So all in all, what are our main core assets? So we have, of course, the IDS reference architecture. That's the blueprint for data spaces with detailed specifications. You can find it on our GitHub repository. This is really the guidelines how to build a data space. Then we have the IDSA rulebook. This is how to implement IDS in the real world. So this is more our governance scheme. We have a certification scheme, so third-party conformity that allows for informed decision making. And we are dealing with partners here that certify either the organization or components like the connector. Right now, we have certified connectors by T-Systems, VTT, and most recently by the GATE Institute from Bulgaria. And we have a portfolio of open source building blocks, again, to bring IDS in commercial setups. So all in all, what I said again, if you look at this picture here, the data space involves, of course, the data owner, which specific usage policies, and via the gateway device, often IDS connector, IDS certified connector, the data can be shared. So this is really the data exchange that happens in a data space. And then if the usage policies are accepted by the data user, then this flow of data can work. As you can see, there are also additional aspects. We specify this also in our rulebook, what are mandatory functions, what are optional functions. So the broker, for example, the identity provider that you know with whom you're dealing with, vocabulary and clearinghouse. And you can definitely have a look into our rulebook to learn more about these mandatory and optional requirements. So I think now I hand over to you, Anil.
Thank you, Julien, for the great introduction. So I will be stealing the screen sharing for a moment, and I hope now it's visible to everyone, right? Okay, so yeah, okay, perfect, thank you. So this infographic that was shown by Julien is really great to show all the components that are existing in an IDS compliant data space. But on the other hand, this is also showing a perfect world. So it's not a perfect world, unfortunately, because that's why the data space protocol comes in, because there are, as you may know, or as you may experience in your daily experiments, there are a lot of problems that are happening. First of all, the interoperability is a problem, and it's not always the connectors are communicating with each other seamlessly. So there are some limited interoperability problems, or the standards are incompatible, or the formats are conflicting, or terms of the data sharing are not clear from time to time. So data space protocol is the protocol for data exchange, which is offering a standardized way to exchange data between parties. And it's dictating that methodology so that all the parties involved in a data exchange can use the same methodology, can adhere to the same standards, so that they can have a seamless data exchange between themselves. So for this lack of interoperability, to position what kind of role data space protocol is playing here, you can always think about the other protocols that were in place in the past, like SWIFT for banking, or HTTP or TCP/IP, or GSM or UPC, Universal Product Code, or Bluetooth, and all this kind of stuff. It has been always, all these protocols are having the same situation. Like, there are parties who want to exchange something, but there are lack of interoperability, which is caused by because the parties don't speak the same language. Let's focus, for example, to SWIFT in banking. The banks were well aware that they should exchange something, which is money, but there was no universal way that can explain or dictate how it should be like. So that's why there was a need for that on a universal level. So some people came up with this protocol to make it possible for banks to exchange money between themselves on across borders. So that's basically why we have this data space protocol in place. So it's actually showing a way to seamlessly communicate between parties, and it's consisting of a control plane and a data plane. So there is a clear separation of those. Because where you make, I mean, control plane is where you make these catalogs and the rule, where you set the rules of how the data will be consumed. And in the data plane, you are focusing on the data exchange, on the seamless data exchange happening between parties. So that gives some advantages, such as it's easier to scale your data space implementation. You can just scale your control plane and apply it into another data space implementation. So you are basically separating these two, and which is giving you a lot of advantages, which are stated in the slide. On the other hand, we know the interoperability is a problem which is consisting of many steps and branches. But if you stick to the new European interoperability framework, then there are these 4 layers, which are legal, organizational, semantic, and technical. And we can easily state that the data space protocol is providing an adequate level of interoperability for the technical and semantic levels. And then the organizations who are implementing or who are taking part in a data space can also customize some other interoperability requirements according to their own needs. So it's consisting of 3 main pillars, which are catalog protocol, contract negotiation, and transfer process protocol, which could be thought as the subsequent steps that are happening during a data exchange. So first, in the catalog protocol, you are, I mean, the data provider is defining how the data set will be shown, will be listed, and will be made accessible to the potential data consumers. And then the parties come together to negotiate the terms based on which the data will be consumed. And then in the transfer process protocol, it's actually where the data transfer is happening. So it's about how the data will be delivered and how well it will be delivered. So it's actually like this kind of structuring is like real life a little bit. So once you go to a supermarket for shopping, for example, you see what's available to you, what are the terms to consume. I mean, supermarket is not the best example, I know that, but just to name it. And then the contract terms and purchasing terms are already set, so you have the price tags and everything, and then the transfer process is about how do you want the goods to be delivered. I mean, if you want to take it in a bag or if you want it to be sent to your home, and all this kind of stuff. So you can think about it like the real life. So it's actually just showing the 3 steps of the data exchange, and beneath all of them, there are also the details that are showing how the catalogs could be listed and negotiated. The contracts can be negotiated and transfer can be processed. It's referring many times to the widely used technologies and formats like the DCAT, for example, for cataloging, or ODRL for policy making. So more can be found in the repository and also in the IDSA knowledge base. So it's important to mention that it's not something, data space protocol is not something that we wrote down in our head office and we are saying that everyone should use it. So it's not the case. It was born as a natural need from the industry. So a lot of representatives from a lot of companies, organizations came together to define it, and also it's a constant process. It's a dynamic one, and it's still evolving. But we have a stable version since a half year, and currently it's also being used and experimented by many organizations. So that's really very important to set this feedback loop, because based on their experiments and based on their feedback, the standard is being worked and being improved. Because there may be always something lacking. And there are also R&D projects who are where IDSA is also involved in, that are adopting the data space protocol and applying it into the real life scenarios and use cases so that we can understand to what extent it is solving this problem. So why the data space protocol is essential in brief. So the data sovereignty is maintained because data space protocol allows the data providers to set and enforce their own usage policies. So there is data sovereignty, which is ensured because the data providers can set the rules based on which the data will be consumed by the data consumers. And you have the interoperability, as I've explained. So because you are, I mean, all parties involved in a data exchange are using the same standardized data exchange format. And so the growth and scalability are also supported because, as said, you have the clear separation of the control plane and the data plane. So once you have a very good control plane, like where you are able to set your rules, you can just use the same control plane in another data space implementation. So we know interoperability is complex and challenging, but it's just providing a comprehensive standard for the technical and semantic. So as I've stated before, also the makes a foundational interoperability needed for data exchange, and then the domains, they can customize and implement their specific interoperability requirements. So that would be basically it about the data space protocol. And if you have, yeah, I back to you, Julien, and then I'm waiting for the questions.
Exactly. We will come shortly to your questions. So let me just take over the screen again. So just what Anil just presented about the data space protocol. There are already a lot of people co-defining the data space protocol and using it. But also, if you want to have a look at what's on the market in general, how many people are developing data spaces in what kind of different development stages, then we came up with this data space radar. So this radar tracks companies developing data spaces based on the IDS standard. And as you can see here, it's really like this military radar. So you can definitely see that on the outskirts, these are early phase data spaces. And the more you venture into the center, the more mature these data spaces become. And as you can see, there are also different domains. So from health, Green Deal, supply chain, and of course, manufacturing. As we also started with the manufacturing domain when it comes to the topic of data spaces in general. So you can visit the dataspaces radar.org site to know more about the radar. We are using here Power BI, and this is just a simplified graph here. So when you go on the data space radar, you can also filter to different domains, companies. There will also be now more information about the connectors that are being used, and you can also filter geographical regions. So this is really an interactive tool that you can use to get more of a market oversight. So as I said, right now we have 160 total entries. I think even more right now. So as you can see, most of them are more in the manufacturing, the supply chain domain. But we're also having around 6 data space projects and implementations in health, and 10 in agriculture. So, for example, Anil is working in some projects that are dealing with agriculture. It's also really interesting what they're doing, and 12 in mobility and so on. So I already mentioned that the members are the lifeblood of our work in our organization, and we are really operating here on a global level. And this also comes down to the forms of partnerships that we have. So you can be a member of IDSA and working in specific working groups. We will come to this in a moment. But you can also be the national champion of your country. So we have hubs all around the world. For example, the University of Tokyo, and they are conducting data space discovery days. So these are events where also national companies, in this case, then Fujitsu, for example, Hitachi, and so on, present their data space projects. And we also present now the status of IDSA and of our community. And then this is a kind of a get-together, a networking event, but also the competence centers and hubs, they are developing also technology. They are testing technology. Some of them have their own test beds, and they test their connectors against, for example, the Eclipse data space components, so one of the most widely used connectors. So we see different kinds of work, and we will have a event in Vienna this year. I will also mention this in a couple of minutes about our community in itself, and there we will also have a session about the hubs and a hub alignment, so that these hubs can also share best practices and work maybe more closely together in the future. But right now we have very good coverage, and it's still growing. So to give you a holistic picture, so we already said that we have different concepts: data space protocol, rulebook, certification, and reference architecture model. And we are aligning the architectures and the thought leadership on data spaces also with other data space institutions like GaiaX, iShare, Fireware, BDVA, also DTEX, which is located in Japan. And we are also working on the mandate of the European Commission in different European funded projects, for example, the Data Space Support Center. We are promoting open source solutions. I already mentioned this a couple of times, our GitHub repository. We are also part of this Eclipse Foundation, and we are also collaborating with Fireware. Then we have IDS certified data connectors. So you can have an IDS certified connector like the one from VTT or T-Systems. And we are also providing some information about the status of these connectors in our monthly connector report. There will be a change in the future about this connector report. This will also merge a little bit with the Data Space Radar. But right now you can find this connector report, and there will be one more iteration this month. We also have, of course, impressive first stories, data space stories, Catena X and the automotive domain, mobility data space, SCSN, and so on. And what we are striving for, as I said, is a global adoption. So really bringing IDS concept to global standardization, the European focused CEN-CENELEC, ISO, IEEE, and W3C. So right now, it's now the time for questions, and after that we can go on with working groups, other upcoming events where you are warmly invited to join. But now it's time for questions. So I see no raised hand, but there's something in the chat. In which components of a data space do you see the contract negotiation process?
Well, it's falling partly under several. So first, of course, the connectors are involved as the mechanisms that are exchanging the messages during the contract negotiation, but also the broker is part of it, because this is where the data sets are listed and their preferred usage conditions are listed. So you can also consider that as part of the contract negotiation process. And also the clearinghouse, because once a contract has been agreed upon, then you have the transactions being recorded in the clearinghouse. So we would name it as 3, but of course, depending on the data space implementation and the design, it can change. I mean, some could exclude some of these components. I mean, not connector, of course, but broker or clearinghouse. But I mean, naturally, from the IDSA, pure IDSA perspective, I would say this falls under this 3.
Thanks a lot, Anil. I think we already received some questions before this session. I don't know, Anil, if you want to go to these questions. For example, there was one question: how is it planned that small and medium-sized enterprises can install and operate a connector? So a little bit about the onboarding process. I think that's also really interesting.
Yeah, sure. So basically, so how is it planned that SMEs can install and operate the connector? So IDSA's architecture is so designed to be inclusive for organizations of all sizes. So either as an SME or a big company or anything. So the onboarding process for SMEs is typically involving the simplified step to install and configure a connector, which is the main gateway for secure data exchange. Actually, it depends on the connector implementation. So once there's a connector X or connector Y, so they can have their own onboarding processes to it. So we have already some, I mean, a lot of data connectors which are listed in the data connector report, and each of them have their own onboarding processes, I would say. As IDSA, we can't really say that we have anything to facilitate the SMEs, the onboarding process of the SMEs, because this is something that should be left to the developers of the connectors, because they are the best ones who know how an external party can use it, because this is their product. So the user experience is something that falls into their shoulders mostly. But on the other hand, IDSA has a high-level architecture, which is so designed to be including all, I mean, companies and organizations of all sizes, I would say. I hope this was adequate, at least.
Yeah, we have some follow-up questions. So the first one again from Christoph is, could it also be solved with a data intermediary?
Oh yeah, the contract negotiation process. Yeah, definitely. So in IDSA, we don't, in the architecture, we have some sections talking about the data intermediary, but it's also, I think it's also not super clear to anyone in the data space world, because we have the role of the data intermediary and how it falls under which process and what it does during the data exchange. It's not super clear for the pioneers, at least as far as I see. So it could be solved with the data intermediary, definitely, to overcome the technological challenges in the industry. But of course, there should be, I mean, from the IDSA perspective, we would say that there should be a clear mapping of what data intermediary does and how such a role would interact with the components that we have.
Yeah, there was one more question from a participant who's not in this call anymore. What does a broker do? Was one of the questions. Yeah.
Yeah, basically acting like a data marketplace, and where the data sets are listed and where the catalogs are existing and made available for potential data consumers.
Exactly. I'm just looking at the questions that we received before. So describe the data exchange process in detail. I think we did that also with some of the graphs that were provided. Is the data exchange decentralizedly solved by providing APIs? is also something that's quite easy to answer here.
Yes. The data exchange in IDSA's framework is API driven and also decentralized. So each participant in the data space is operating their own connector to connect to the data space, and which is using secure and standardized APIs to exchange data with the other participants. On the bigger picture, the data exchange is governed by usage policies that are set by the data provider and that are negotiated and enforced through the connectors. So it ensures that all data transfers comply with the initially agreed terms. So this could be an example of a decentralized approach that can only exist with trust and data sovereignty. And it allows the participants to control their own data during the data exchange, I would say.
Yeah, and then we have one last question that can be tackled. So, who will host the data space components like the clearinghouse or vocabulary? So, and where will this be operated? Yeah, also a very good question, by the way.
Yeah. Well, according to the current architecture and the vision of IDSA, we would say the data space components like the clearinghouse or vocabulary hub or identity provider. So they can be hosted by, they should be hosted by certified service providers within the data space ecosystem. In a perfect world, of course, I mean, talking about certification, they can be operated in the cloud or as on-premise solutions as well. So it totally depends on the needs and preferences of the participants and implementers of the data space, I would say. So for example, some components in a data space could be offered by commercial cloud service providers, and others can be hosted by independent organizations. So it's flexible architecture. So what's important is to ensure that the components are reliable and scalable and adaptable to the specific needs of that data space, I would say.
Yes, and we already see that some organizations will act as the main operator in a data space. So this is something that's also in the pipeline, so to say. So there's one more question from Samir. Can you explain a general flow to understand the use of a connector? We have worked with the EDC connector once before in Container X, and it had a complex process of BPN discovery, EDC discovery, and so on. Is there a simpler way to achieve the same results?
Yeah, so first, well, I will start from the last one. It's not possible for me to say if there is a simpler way to achieve the same result because it totally depends on the connector implementation. So it might be, in this case, it might be good to check the connectors that are listed in the data connector report because some of them are already available as open source, or some of them have their own teams that are developing it. So you can basically contact them, I think. And because some others can offer easier, let's say, contract negotiation or easier BPN discovery or this kind of things. But so as I said, this is something that should be answered and given more details by the external developers who are developing this data connector project.
I don't see any more questions, but if you have any questions, feel free to write them down or just raise your hand. I will continue with the presentation, and as I said, it's more now upcoming events, what will happen in the next months. And then we will again be here in this room, and you can ask some questions, of course. So let me share my screen again. So, and thanks again for your questions. They're really interesting, and that's why we have the Q&A session. So, yeah, I already mentioned this connector report, and this, for example, here was the May edition, but there will be one more in September. You can definitely take a look in that because some of the questions were also related now to the connector. So to see what is on the market is really crucial to get an understanding what is the development process like. How many connectors are already developed and so on. So there will also be a publication on the topic of standardization specifically. So this emphasizes the necessity for international standards to enable sovereign data sharing, addressing the fragmented structure of current data spaces. So this gives you a holistic picture where we are right now and what's coming up when it comes to the objective and the relevance of standardization for data spaces. I can't give you a direct date here, but I think in autumn of this year, you will definitely find a specific new position paper on standardization. But by the way, you can also read through some of our position papers on our website. There's a position paper on the relationship between and the AI Act and data spaces, also semantic interoperability. We did not tackle this today, but if you're interested in that and how IDSA relates to that, you can also find a very informative position paper on our website. So if you want to really co-create with us, so we already had this mentioned a couple of times, so our different assets, but you can actively be working on that if you are a member of IDSA. So we have a quarterly meeting for the working group architecture, so a bi-weekly in this regard for reference architecture 5.0, which is in the pipeline, also bi-weekly data space protocol and a sub-working group on personal data, because this is also really an interesting and important topic when it comes to data spaces. So how does personal data factor in here? We have a working group quarterly on certification, sub-working group here on the testbed and IDS testing. A monthly call when it comes to the working group rulebook, and also a monthly call for the working group training, because we have this data space body of knowledge where we supervise and guideline a little bit how training courses can be developed, and also syllabus writing and so on. So everyone is on the same page in this working group, and they are developing then training programs. I mentioned our hub in at the University of Tokyo, and they are just right now translating all of our main documents into Japanese, and they are also providing webinars and information sessions about the EDC connector, for example, and also their JADE connector on data space protocol is also one topic of their webinars. So this is really something you need to train your staff. You need to train people to understand what data spaces can do. And in the end, we will also like to see chartered data space engineers, so really experts working in the company that are then certified also by us, because they are using then the knowledge that we transfer. And there are also task forces for everyone. So there's a task force on legal framework and a task force, for example, in China. There will be coming up some more task forces in the future. But for now, this is what we are dealing with. You can register a little bit for the working group newsletter. So just fill in the form. The next working group meetings are coming up pretty soon. So working group architecture, September 17th, September 18th, and 19th are then certification and working group training. And you can also find some information about the working groups on our website. So coming to the events, and there are quite a few. So we have a high-level stakeholder event. I will come to this in a moment. An on-site workshop on semantic interoperability in data spaces. So this is one day before the EBDVF in Budapest. We have the second iteration of the Data Space Discovery Day, and this time in collaboration with the Asian Open Data Summit in Tokyo, October 9th. In Shanghai, there's the Global Data Spaces Roundtable. This is the autumn edition of the edition that also took place in Barcelona. And we have the IDSA and the EU Global Data Spaces Connect. So I will come to the main events in a moment. But right now, last week, there was the China International Big Data Industry Expo. You can also find some information about that on LinkedIn. Our CFO, Thorsten Hülsmann, was there. Right now, there's the Into AI in Dortmund, where also our head office is located. It's an expo for industrial AI applications, and Christoph Mertens from our side is presenting how AI is revolutionized with data spaces. Then there's Data Trustee Models Network Conference, September 12th. So there's also a topic about data space innovations and innovative potential and Digital X. So these are more the German project, the German events in Cologne, September 18th and 19th, and we're here with a tagline, Unlocking New Business Potential. So if you are in Germany, located in Germany, some of these events might be of interest for you. And then last but not least, I know that it's quite a lot of events. So there's a Fireware Global Summit in Naples. Also September 18th and 19th, our CEO Lars Nagel will be there. In Lecce, there's the EGI 2024, September 30th, and Giulia Giulisani will be there. So this is more also for our Italian members, quite interesting. And Lars Nagel and I will be at the European Big Data Value Forum in Budapest from October the 2nd to October the 4th. I will be presenting, for example, the Openverse project and how virtual worlds can be enhanced by data spaces. But this is all for now when it comes to the events. But we have this high-level event next week. And this is where we showcase a little bit how to make the data space protocol an international standard. You can track information on the data space protocol if you scan the QR code here. But as Anil just mentioned today, so we really want to have this data space protocol as the protocol that orchestrates data sharing among data space parties. A protocol that's comparable with GSM, Bluetooth, and so on. So with this high-level event, IDSA and experts from the projects and industry will give insights and present application examples, and the audience will be mainly focused on high-level stakeholders and the European Commission. So let's see what will come out of that. We will also communicate the results of this event. Then for everyone, there's the second Data Space Discovery Day. There will be a registration page where you can also register yourself if you want to travel in person to Tokyo. It's at the University of Tokyo. It's really nice. I've been there a couple of times right now, and this time it's in collaboration with the Asia Open Data Partnership Summit. And this is also covering Southeast Asia. So it's a little bit bigger than before. What will be presented is the progress of Japanese companies in data spaces, and also this cross-continent data space initiative that data free flow with trust. So trust services can also be enhanced by the data space, by data spaces. And in this case, there will be also some ideas shown and some progress that has already been made. So the Japanese Data Week continues on October 10th and 11th with the fourth iteration of the International Open Forum on Data Spaces. This is a discussion forum where some of our European data space initiatives, so for example, IDSA, Gaia X, but also the French DARWEX and DLR from Germany are participating and collaborating with our Japanese partners at the University of Tokyo, the DSA, the Data Society Alliance, and also Mitsubishi. So if you go to the website of the IFDS, so the International Open Forum on Data Society. Then you will find more information about that. By now, it's an open discussion forum, but it's a little bit closed. So if you want to participate there, you need to maybe directly inform me, and I will contact the persons. But the Data Space Discovery Day, as I said, there will be a registration page. You can just click on that and either virtually or in person can participate in this event. So there's also this global data spaces roundtable in Shanghai, and the main objective here is promoting the development through practice. So data spaces driving the digital future, and one of the main goals is that we want to enhance the confidence in data space futures. So what can be done to accelerate the development? Where are already breakthroughs in frameworks and in standardization, and how can this be used in China? So this is organized also by Huawei and the China Futures Internet Engineering Center. So both of them are also presenting their status. So, and last but not least, we have this Global Data Spaces Connect, so November 12th and 13th in Vienna. And right now, here's secure a ticket at a reduced price if you click on this, if you just scan the QR code and type in this code. And on November 12th, we have this specific community fest where we will be on stage and presenting some of our community activities. But this whole event is more based on the concept of what can data spaces really do. So they are connected by technology, they're connected by different countries, different domains, different industries. So to give you really a holistic pictures where we are right now. I think it's a very great event that's coming up, and it's the biggest event till the end of the year. And then next year we will have a data space symposium and everything else that you might know from us from IDSA. But this is the last event of this year. So if you want to see IDS in action, you can also click on some of our video stories on YouTube. You can also stay up to date via our LinkedIn profile. Also, just scan the QR code here and you are directly linked then to our LinkedIn page. And one of the most important things is, of course, we are also dependent on a live and dynamic communities. So if you want to become a member, you're warmly invited to become one. So join the Data Space Pioneers at IDSA. Just download this membership form, send in the filled form to our email, and we welcome you. Then we will personally guide you through our onboarding process. So our main community manager here and responsible for membership is Anna Derebianco. I can also make a direct contact if you're interested to become a member of IDSA. So I think we are good to end this presentation and to end this Q&A session. So data sharing is better than playing alone. That's really one of our main goals. And I think that most of the persons are already gone. Yeah. So I can't see if this Christoph is there anymore. Okay, he had to leave. Yeah, there was one more question in the Q&A, so maybe we can write him an email.
Which one? The last one? I mean.
Yes, the last one. So are there practical examples where connector has been implemented in SME?
Yeah, I already answered by writing in the comments.
Okay, good. Perfect. Then I think it's time to close the session. Thank you very much for your participation. This was a really good Q&A session with a lot of questions and a little bit more interactive. So thanks a lot. Thanks also, Anil, for your technical expertise when it comes to the data space protocol. And yeah, we see us in 1 month then for the next iteration of the Q&A session. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.